The Islamic Republic of Iran is preparing an elaborate attack on Israel that could come at any moment now. Let's see more of the latest on the Iranian threat.
According to new diplomatic messages, the Islamic regime is planning a complex attack on Israel that will include the use of more powerful warheads than they used previously. The regime also intends to use the Iranian army to carry out the attacks. Iranian sources claim the attack will most likely take place after the U.S. election, but prior to the inauguration of a new president. In response to the threats from Iran, the U.S. government has been firmly committed to Israel's defense. On Thursday, CENTCOM Commander General Kurila visited Israel in solidarity and held a situational assessment with the IDF in addition to the THAAD missile defense systems that the U.S. sent to bolster Israel's security. As the threat from Iran looms over Israel, the regime has ramped up internal suppression while the world's attention has been on Gaza and Lebanon. In October alone, a record 166 executions took place in Iran. Overnight, the regime also executed a 20-year-old Iranian Jewish man, Arvin Garamani, who was on death row for being a non-Muslim who defended himself against a Muslim knife-wielding attacker. The execution also falls on the anniversary of the start of the Iranian hostage crisis in 1979, when radical mobs stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and took dozens of Americans hostage for 444 days. Every anniversary, the regime holds celebrations of this event by burning American flags and chanting "Death to America," and this year is no exception, with more disturbing scenes from Iran. This follows Khamenei's recent comments threatening not only Israel, but the United States as well.
Well, Prime Minister Netanyahu says that with or without a diplomatic agreement, Hezbollah will be forced to retreat beyond the Litani River in South Lebanon. Netanyahu visited the border and warned that the war would only stop if Israeli conditions were met. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
With or without a diplomatic agreement, Hezbollah will be moved beyond the Litani River. That's the word from Prime Minister Netanyahu. While visiting troops on the northern border, Netanyahu vowed that Israel will achieve the conditions it needs to restore security to the area and keep Hezbollah at a distance.
עם או בלי הסכם. המפתח להחזרת השקט והביטחון בצפון, המפתח להחזרת תושבינו בצפון בבטחה לבתיהם, זה קודם כל להרחיק את חיזבאללה מעבר לליטני. ושנית, להכות בכל ניסיון של התחמשות מחודשת שלו, ושלישית, להגיב באופן תקיף נגד כל פעולה נגדנו.
International mediators have been attempting to broker a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah that would be based on UN Resolution 1701 that requires Hezbollah to deploy beyond the river, located about 30 kilometers inside Lebanese territory. The ceasefire would also bar the terrorists from rearming and allow Israel to enforce any infractions. Backing up the Prime Minister's words, the IDF is continuing to advance in South Lebanon, where troops are locating and destroying Hezbollah underground infrastructure and its stockpiles of weapons that had been deployed for attack against Israel. During a targeted IDF operation, troops dismantled a Hezbollah terrorist compound. Hezbollah intended to use the compound as a staging ground for an October 7th-style attack into Israeli territory. The troops also located and destroyed rocket launchers, high-powered explosives ready to be activated, anti-tank missiles, mortar shells, AK-47 rifles, surface-to-air missiles, and a launcher concealed in a mountain on a several-meter-long track aimed directly at civilian communities in northern Israel. The Air Force pounded Hezbollah positions in and around the city of Sidon in South Lebanon and continued hitting and degrading rockets and rocket launchers that continue firing into Israel.
Incoming Hezbollah rocket and UAV attacks on northern Israel are ongoing. There have been no reports of serious damages or injuries caused when 4 UAVs came at the same time from 2 different countries. The IDF released footage of the interception of 4 drones launched at Israel this morning. 2 of the drones were from Lebanon and 2 others from Iraq. All were downed within 30 minutes. 2 were shot down inside Israeli airspace and the other 2 outside it. Earlier, a naval missile ship downed an enemy UAV off the coast of Caesarea. as Israeli efforts to reach a ceasefire in Lebanon continue. Joining us to discuss the situation and what we can expect in the coming days is former Knesset member and senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, Ksenia Svetlova. Thank you so much for joining us, Ksenia. It's a pleasure to have you on. I'd like to start by asking you about Lebanon and the Prime Minister's recent statement that with or without a ceasefire, the IDF will continue to push back Hezbollah past the Litani. Do you think it's possible to achieve a ceasefire with the IDF even expanding operations in Lebanon?
Well, I can tell you frankly that I hear for the last few weeks information about the upcoming ceasefire, and it seems to me very unlikely. It seems very unlikely because, first of all, despite some of the IDF goals that were achieved, it is very clear that Hezbollah is still an organic part of the Lebanese fabric, that it is not going anywhere, and that it is resilient in its objection to the realization and implementation of the 1701 UN resolution. So until there is a clear understanding that this is the basically assumption that the IDF goes back when Lebanon starts to implement the 1701 with some international supervision, of course, and so on, and the IDF has some opportunity to go back if things go wrong. Unlike the last time, there can be no ceasefire. That's just a logical outcome.
Thus far, Hezbollah has rejected ceasefire efforts as Israel, you mentioned, would demand freedom to act militarily in southern Lebanon if need be. Why is this so critical? Can you explain a bit more about why it's so important, given what we've seen from UNIFIL and from Lebanon, or what we haven't seen from Lebanon in the past almost 2 decades?
Well, when we are looking at this almost 20 kilometers band between the Israeli border and between the Litani River, it's important to understand that it all became one huge military base. Israel was aware of some of the activities, of much of the activities that were going on there, but even the IDF commanders who had the information about it, they were surprised of the volume, of the scope of what happened during the last 18 years, since the Lebanese war in 2006. When we are when we are discussing the pushing back the Hezbollah beyond the Litani, what does it actually mean? Because we are speaking about villages such as Kafr Kile, Aita Shab, and many others, Maruna Ras, of course, Bin Jbeil, that they are comprised. The population is comprised of Hezbollah fighters and their families. So even if the fighters themselves will go back 20 kilometers, who will prevent? How we will prevent? They're going back to their homes. We are talking about their homes. So these are not foreign fighters. These are part of the fabric of the southern Lebanon. Emily, I've been to Lebanon as a journalist twice. And I can tell you that, it was before the 1701 was adopted, but it was very, very clear that at that time, it was 2005, 2006, there was no power in Lebanon that could effectively disarm Hezbollah, because that's what needs to happen. Hezbollah needs to be disarmed beyond Litani, around Litani, in all of the Lebanon, because Hezbollah fighters also hide in northern Lebanon. They try to go to Christian villages that actively fight, try to push them back. So basically, we have to talk not only about this very narrow issue of pushing back beyond the Litani. How does Lebanon and how does the world disarm Hezbollah on the Lebanon sovereign territory and returns the sovereignty to the Lebanese state? Is there a state? Can we talk really about something that is somebody that can take responsibility over there? For now, unfortunately, I do not see such element.
We're also hearing rumors that the regime in Iran may be using proxies to carry out a more complex and more aggressive counterattack on Israel, perhaps even in the coming days. Would this be impacted at all by a ceasefire, whether in Lebanon or in Gaza, or we see it as completely unrelated to the Islamic Republic efforts against the state of Israel?
Well, I think that we did hear in the past from various Iranian representatives, it was back in August, that if there will be a deal over Gaza, then they will reconsider perhaps their reaction. But I would suggest to everybody not to build on that too much. because Iranians by now they have their own score. They, it's not only about Lebanon. It's not only about Gaza. It's about their projected strength and power over their proxies and in the region in general. So we are speaking not only about, how they will retaliate over Hania or Sinwar or Nasrallah or whoever. Right now, this is the survival, basically, of the Iranian created the fire of ring, which they took proud for a long time around Israel, and their ability to manage successfully their proxies around the Middle East. I think that if there will be a ceasefire, there will, of course, there will be some pressures, perhaps, from the world and so on, to maybe wait or to make this reaction milder. But in any case, I think that, the Iranians are now on this revenge mission. And I think that Israel has to be very smart about it, strong about it, and not to count on any occasions such as possible ceasefire that, I do not see it coming. And if it will be coming, it might be a big mistake.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. But thank you, Ksenia Svetlova, for your analysis today.
Thank you.
Well, the IDF has revealed that it carried out a commando raid in Syria and captured an operative gathering intel for the Islamic regime. ILTV's Devo Klein has the details.
The commando raid took place in southern Syria in late August, and the man targeted was allegedly carrying out surveillance operations on the border for the Iranians. The raid was carried out by the Igaz Commando Unit along with field interrogation from IDF intelligence. The Iranian agent was identified as Ali Suleiman Al-Asi, a Syrian national from the village of Saida. The covert nighttime raid took only minutes and was carried out in close proximity to Syrian army troops. The subject was taken from his bed without harming any of his family members. Prior to his apprehension, the army says that Al-Asi was involved in collecting intelligence on the IDF movements in the Golan Heights along the Syrian-Israeli border. His capture effectively thwarted a prospective attack against Israel in the Golan. The army released footage from the interrogation, and the suspect admitted that he passed information directly to his Iranian handlers.
And Eli Feldstein, a 32-year-old spokesperson for the Prime Minister's office, has been accused of leaking classified information with national security implications to European media, according to the Rishon LeZion Magistrate Court. The court confirmed that there are 3 additional suspects who are reportedly linked to the defense establishment and whose names remain undisclosed. The leaked documents served as the basis for a widely discredited article published by the London Jewish Chronicle, which was eventually withdrawn, claiming that Hamas planned to move hostages out of Gaza via Egypt. Another article in Germany's Bild suggested that Hamas was prolonging hostage negotiations as a psychological tactic against Israel.
We represent the forum of the families whose loved ones have been kidnapped, and this matter today is going to be crucial for them because for the last year they have been waiting to hear any intelligence or any information about any negotiation about the release of those hostages. And if, at least according to the media, some of the information has been made up or some of the information has been stolen from army resources or sources, then we think that the victims, the families, have the right to learn about any relevant detail. Not even security issues can hide this information.
Feldstein was arrested last week, and the story broke on Friday. He is set to remain in custody until at least Tuesday. According to Ynet, Feldstein and the other suspects face a potential prison sentence of up to 15 years. With the U.S. elections just around the corner, the world anxiously awaits to see who will be the next president of the United States. The outcome holds significant implications for Israel. So just how invested are Israelis in this election? ILTV's Ariel Elachiani has more.
Yes, thank you, Emily. So as we all know, tomorrow is the election day in the US. And over the past year specifically, we've seen just how important the American president's word and action is for the state of Israel. But how much is the average person in Israel actually following the elections? Well, I'm here now in Tel Aviv to speak to a few people to find out exactly that. Are you following the US elections?
Yes, I think you can say I follow, and not too tightly, but I follow.
A little bit, yes.
I'm following the U.S. elections. I'm hoping for Trump to win.
Yeah, of course.
And do you have a good understanding of how the elections in America work?
Not really. I know that they have percentages of the vote already taken, but I'm not that big on the whole system.
It's pretty complicated. I probably know a little bit, but not the full extent.
No, I'm sure I'm not, because the selection in the US is very different from Israel, and I'm not sure particular about the details there.
I have some understanding of how it works. Not too deep, but like kaha.
And finally, do you care what the outcome is?
Yes, I do care. I think every Israeli cares about the outcome of the elections. I think Americans has probably some other concerns, but I think we do care about the outcome.
Yeah, America is the leader of the free world, democratic world, and Israel's biggest supporter. So I think, as a person living here, it does matter to us.
And why do you care who wins?
Because I've seen some commentary by Kamala Harris that sounded kind of like, what?
I think because I know that Kamala Harris is not so much love Israel, and it's important that our biggest friend will love Israel.
I think conservative politics have always been more favorable to Israel, and they always will be. So, if you care about Israel, you should be voting for Trump. Like, end of story. It's not even a question of a doubt.
Well, several hundred Israelis gathered today in Samaria to pray for the well-being of the United States as it heads into tomorrow's presidential elections. The event was held in ancient Shiloh and was organized by the Binyamin Regional Council. The worshipers included American immigrants who voted by absentee ballot, as well as native Israelis who appreciate the U.S. friendship. Organizers said that a strong America means a strong Israel. A strong America also understands the importance of the Israeli biblical heartland in Judea and Samaria. Well, Americans have already begun early voting, and many Israelis are following closely to see who the next president of the United States will be. Here to discuss with us is Professor Zahi Shalom of the Misgav Institute. Thank you so much for joining us today, Professor Shalom. To start, I want to ask you, what do you expect to see in this U.S. election? Do you anticipate a Trump victory or a Harris victory?
I think it would be irrational thing to try to predict it when all the ballots say that it's kind of equal voting. So I'm not going to put myself in a position to say who is going to win. What I'm worried about mostly is that the winning side will not win a devastating victory, and that there will be a kind of disagreement and an attempt by the one who was defeated to legitimize the other side. My point is that the main problem of the United States is not who is going to win, but actually if the other side will accept the outcome of the election. And the second question is whether he will try to upset the election by violent means. I think this is the main and critical issue for the United States, not only for the United States, but actually for the whole free world, including Israel.
Definitely, as we saw in the prior election, a challenge to the legitimacy of elections, which of course can be very, very dangerous, as you're correctly noting. I wanted to ask you, in the event that we do see Harris prevail, do you expect to see any kind of change in Israel's approach to the current war?
No, I belong to those who think that eventually the outcome of the election is not going to have really dramatic influence on Israel policy, especially in this war in Gaza and Lebanon. Eventually, when you look at what has been happening during the last year, there were ups and downs. Yeah, there were disagreements. There were embarrassing moments, things like that. But eventually, when you look at it from kind of historical point of view, you see that Israel has done actually what it wanted to do. The United States was opposed to the entrance of soldier on the ground into Gaza, and we did it. They opposed the capture of hospitals, we did it. They opposed going into Rafah, we did it. They opposed our policy against Iran, and we are doing actually what we want to do. Eventually, I don't belong to those who think that there's going to be a dramatic change if it's going to be Trump or Harris. Eventually, it all depends on us, on our unity inside Israel, on our resilience, on our standing on what we want to do. This is my viewpoint.
Now, when it comes to the issue of the regime in Iran, we've seen strong statements from both Kamala Harris and former President Trump regarding the American response to the Islamic regime in Iran. Do you think that Israel will have the necessary support to deal with Iran regardless of who the next president is? Do you think that Trump or Harris will be strong enough when it comes to enforcement of sanctions or a potential nuclear deal in the future or not? Which president do you think perhaps would be better when it comes to putting down and stopping this regime and their funding of terror proxies?
Again, Madam, in my view, now it all depends on us. There is going to be a military clash with Iran. There is almost no doubt about it, and it all depends on the outcome of this clash. If Israel is going to blow a real strike on Iran, on its nuclear facilities or its energy facilities, or on the government, it's going to put the whole Middle East in a different situation. I mean, the whole balance of power between Israel, the United States, and Iran is going to change. Eventually, if we succeed, the United States, any regime, Harris or Trump, will follow us. If, God forbid, we don't succeed, this is a different story. But the question now is in Israel's hands, in Israel's ability to carry out a very successful military operation against Iran. This is the whole issue, and it's going to be decided somewhere in this coming month, 1 month or two.
All right. Well, that is actually optimistic conversation here with you today at a time when, of course, you see Americans very much on one side or the other. So I appreciate your comments today.
Right.
Thank you, Professor Shalom.
You're most welcome.
Sagot Winery, where passion meets tradition. Nestled in the heart of Binyamin, our vineyards yield exquisite wines crafted with generations of expertise.
And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Cloudy skies are expected tonight around the country, with temperatures reaching lows of around 14 degrees Celsius or 57 degrees Fahrenheit. Tomorrow, more cloudy skies and light drops are expected in the north, as temperatures should be reaching highs of about 25 degrees Celsius or 77 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, as we close today, we also mark 29 years since the assassination of Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, the peacemaker whose death shocked the Israeli society and the international community. Today, as we pursue peace, we remember his legacy. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channel, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Emily Schrader. Be well, and thank you for watching.